My name is Scott Hanselman, and I'm going to be talking about the Microsoft Web Stack of Love. That is not the official marketing name. Although you're here, actually, marketing guy in the front there, making sure I don't say anything inappropriate. I keep coming up with different names for our products that they don't really approve of. So I want to talk about the Web Stack of Love. This is all of the great stuff that we released post Visual Studio 2010 and kind of launched at Mix. Now, if you saw some of the Mix stuff, of course, our videos, he's leaving already. We've already lost one guy. I'm going to show stuff that no one's ever seen before. No, it's not working. Including some exciting stuff for web forms developers, as well as a new build of the Entity Frameworks migration stuff that I showed at Mix. So I've got daily builds on my machine that were just emailed to me minutes ago. So we'll see not only an overview of the cool stuff that's going on, but also some of the new stuff that you've never seen before. So there's been a lot of cool software. Well, this is not a very Metro slide, so I'm going to... No. There we go. Got to make sure everything is done in the Metro theme. Otherwise, you get in trouble. We've released a lot of really cool software lately. We've had ASP.NET MVC3, which came out a while ago, but we refreshed it with the new tooling. New tooling that came out at Mix. I'm going to show you that new tooling and why it's useful and why it's interesting. And then you can extend even that new extension to MVC3 with a thing called MVC scaffolding, which is open source and up in NuGet, which I will also talk about. And then I'll show some fun stuff for web forms developers to make sure you guys realize that web forms is not dead. Talking about IIS Express and some of the things that you can do with IIS Express and why both developers and IT administrators should care about that. I might sprinkle in a little SQL Compact Edition, I'm not really sure. But I will show lots of Entity Framework 4.1 Magic Unicorn Edition. That's not the official name, but if we say it enough, it will become the official name. Just like Microsoft with a $, right? That's official because you said it enough. jQuery templates, data binding is another thing we've been working on in WebMatrix. I won't be talking about those two things, but you can get lots of information on that on the interwebs. And then that's the slides. I usually get an applause when I say I'm not going to show any more slides, but that's okay. I don't want your pity applause. No, no. You're applauding for no more slides. It's a shame because I have so many more slides like this one. And there's no more, well, there's this slide also. And I always ask myself, what would Neil Patrick Harris do when I'm writing Entity Framework? And then also this slide. Now, I thought this was brilliant. I thought this was the smartest slide I'd come up with. And people were like, what? Carriage return, line feed, the ninja? Like, no, dude, enter the ninja. Isn't that amazing? No, see? Like, two people got that joke. Well, all you stupid carriage return, line feed, the ninja, that doesn't work. You can't do it like that. It's not funny. It's not how the ninja rolls. And like some VB guy was like, first airbender? I'm like, no, no, VB guy. Get your array math right, dude. Airbender at -1? No, no, that would be an empty array of airbenders. What's wrong with you? I'm taking your nerd card away. And then we'll talk about this super early preview of EF migrations that we can't tell anyone about because I literally asked the guy who wrote it to send me what he had. So I've gone around the bosses and don't tell. We're over. Good night. Cool. So that was the slides. Yay. Let's switch back over to here. And by the way, if you want to know where I got my Epic Suite wallpaper, it is at vs2010wallpapers.com. And these are all community wallpapers, like the Magic Unicorn, who has very droopy eyelids, which is concerning to me. I'm not sure why he's magic. We've got like hundreds of really great community wallpapers around here. One of them was really awesome. one of them said, "Friends don't let friends post back," which I thought was pretty sweet. So definitely check that out. Okay, what should we do first? Okay, let's talk about MVC. So I'm bringing up Visual Studio, and I've installed ASP.NET MVC 3. So we've got MVC 3 with, let me unpin this guy here. Do you guys know what any of these do? It's one of these two. There we go. You've got MVC 3, and you see on my system I've got both MVC 3 and MVC 2. And this update that we shipped to MVC 3 is not, come on in guys, there's lots of room. These guys can defragment right over here. There's an unmovable page file here, but we've got an area here that is all movable files. MVC 3 runtime stays the same. So you don't have to update your servers with this update. It's a tooling update. If you look in add remove programs, what you'll actually see are two choices for MVC 3. One will be the runtime, and the other one will be the tooling update. So it's this guy here. And what you'll see is you'll see update. Now on my machine, I've got a couple of things, because I have both Visual Studio and Express installed, which is an important thing to point out because the MVC 3 tooling update works with Express. So all of this stuff still works with the free software. And another thing that we did at Mix that I think is really significant is if you go to the ASP.NET website, we've refreshed the website to make things a lot easier to find. Just from the home page, if you hit Get Started, we've got the 3 different kinds of technologies, MVC Web Forms and Web Pages. And this button here, it may not seem like a big deal, but a lot of work was put into that button. That button now is the Get Everything button. And I mean that seriously. That was done custom, and it goes to a special link to a special bundle inside of a thing called the Web Platform Installer. The Web Platform Installer is getting smarter with each release, and in this new release, if you have nothing, you have a fresh, naked machine with no developer tools on it, you click that button, we'll bring down everything free, IIS Express, MVC 3 and tooling, complete, and then you'll have a total development machine set up with just one kind of chained installer inside of Web Platform. But if you already have Visual Studio and you click that button, we will figure that out already. We'll give you Service Pack 1, and we'll look at what you already have and just get you the pieces that you need. So it's get everything and do it in a bandwidth efficient way. So definitely check that out. Then from here, we've got an all-new tutorial section on the site, including 3 new videos by me to explain to you, like, why would I want to use MVC or Web Forms or Web Pages, new videos from Pluralsight, and basically a free book's worth of information. So I encourage you to check that out. That exists for each of Web Forms, Web Pages, and MVC. But definitely the button is the best way to get everything I'm going to show you. And everything I'm going to show you today, you should be able to do yourself at home. So I'm going to hit File New Project. We've got a new choice for intranet applications to set up Windows-based authentication. I'll pick Internet. And there's also a new button here, Use HTML5 Markup. All of the templates in MVC 3 have been refreshed to use HTML5. If you don't want that, turn that off. So now we actually have 2 buttons to detect whether or not you suck. You can turn that one off, and you can turn that off, and now you completely suck. And if you're like rockin' awesome, you'd be like, you know, HTML5 and unit tests, right? But I'm only half awesome, so I will only do that much. Hit OK. The other thing that we're doing is we're shipping what are called NuGet packages with the default template. And this is a pretty interesting thing. NuGet is a package management system that I'm going to talk about on Wednesday. I'm going to have a talk called NuGet in the Enterprise, talk about specifically what NuGet means to IT folks and folks that work inside of large businesses. And I'll explain it all. NuGet is a package management system that allows you to go and download packages as easily as saying add library reference. So for example, I can go and say add library reference, go online, and search for one of my favorite packages. It's called ELMA, Error Logging Modules and Handlers. We just did a web services call. I hit install. Look on the right-hand side, ELMA just came down, installed itself, and integrated with my web server and my web config. It's really, really easy. Now, if I go and say add library reference, and I want to see what I actually have installed, notice that I've got Elma installed, but I already had jQuery and Modernizer installed. So this is new. So this actually means that the reference we have to jQuery in the new ASP.NET MVC and soon in Web Forms is a live reference. Do you understand that? Because every time we release a new version of MVC or something like this, we refresh jQuery, and the next day, jQuery updates itself. And then you have to go and find jQuery, and that's a huge hassle. But now you can click on Updates and see I could go and update jQuery and the IntelliSense directly from one place. So we have live references. I can actually open up the packages config file in my web application and see not only the Elma that I just installed, but the others. I'm also going to talk a little later about Modernizer. Modernizer is a new JavaScript library from the guys at Google and Paul Irish. We're actually shipping that. So that's now the second or third piece of open source software that we're shipping with MVC and again soon with Web Forms. So lots more open source coming in. And these are supported open source projects that we care about, and we hope that you do too. Otherwise, we wouldn't include them. We're also including the Entity Framework 4.1. You can see why I call it Magic Unicorn Edition. It's easier than saying 4.1.1031130 dot something Service Pack 1 September or CTP. Let's make a new model and say add class, and we'll do like person. So I'm going to be using Entity Framework code first. Entity Framework lets you do things model first with a dragging designer, or database first. I've got an existing database and I want to make classes that look like it. Here, I'm going to just say prop tab tab ID, prop tab tab string tab first dot prop tab tab string tab tab last. Boom. So now I've just made a person. It's so easy. Don't you like seeing Microsoft demos like this rather than me dragging a database from the Northwind and then a data grid? No? I like it. You guys are a very subdued crowd. You're making me sad. There'll be tears later. There's always the review, and when you fill out your reviews, by the way, make sure to fill out your reviews. There's going to be like, hey, great talk, keep it loose, like the new Microsoft. You're not funny. Microsoft is really doing great things right now. Stop being funny. So I can tell which one of you guys is going to do that. You're number one in all ones. My wife likes me, and that's all that matters. So I've got a person object here, and I've made it code first. There's now 3 ways to make entities. Database first, model first, code first. So I've said person. I can now say add controller. And then this dialog box is new. This is new in MVC 3. Again, a tooling update, not a server-side update. And I can call it like the person controller. And I've got this choice of templates. I can say I want an empty controller, or I want one that does CRUD, create, read, update, delete, using the Entity Framework. I can then pick my model class, person, and whoops, scary. And I'll pick new data context, and we'll call it the person context. And I can choose whether I want to use web form style ASPX or whether I want to use the new Razor syntax. We'll hit add, and then watch on the right-hand side of the screen in the Solution Explorer, things are starting to show up. So we're doing code generation talking to that person object. We're looking at those, and we're using templates to generate automatically a person database context with a set of, and it automatically did pluralization. It knew that person and people, that people is the plural of person. It made a person controller with a list of people, details, create, edit, delete. So it generated all of that, doing the right thing. And then it created these views down here. So I can open up index and I can see for each item in model, where in this case for each person in people. Now I haven't thought about databases or said anything about databases at this point, but I can go ahead and run this application. Because we're using Entity Framework code first, let's see what happens. There's my default MVC application. We'll hit enter. We've got an index, automatically created this stuff for me. So I've got edit, details, delete. Now notice that I don't have any validation. See how it allowed me to put in a first name and last name that didn't exist? Well, let's find out where the database is first, and then we'll fix that. Go to SQL Management Studio, open up the databases node, and I got this weird guy here, application33.models.personContext. Because I didn't say anything about the connection string, it wanted me to succeed rather than showing me a yellow screen of death, so it made me a database for development purposes, and it knew I had SQL Express, so it put one there. If I can open that up, I've got a people table with first and last. Notice that both first and last allow nulls. So I can see now why it allowed me to enter in a first name and a last name. Let's torch that. Let's go back over here. Have a seat, sir. And go over to person. And let's say that those are required. And I could even put on like something like string length of 20. You can't have people with long names for some reason. Okay. Now I'll run this. Go back to person. And now I've got validation. And that validation is expressed in that one place. It's expressed on that entity framework model. Well, let's go back over and see what's going on in our database. Hit refresh. Open this guy up. Wow. Wow. So that's cool. So I say it in one place. The authoritative source for metadata is that entity framework model. Then things start becoming more interesting. And now don't feel like every time Microsoft introduces a new thing and then makes everybody talk about it, that means that your thing is no longer around, right? There's an old joke that just because it wasn't mentioned in the keynote doesn't mean it's dead. It'd be cool, though. We could have like a whole list of products that they could announce before the keynote. Here are the list of products that we are still supporting, right? And they would just tell you all of those. And then no one would freak out and write an article about it. Nobody said Silverlight in the opening of the TechEd keynote. Freak out! Did they say anything about Silverlight in the beginning of the keynote? Oh. So in this case, Entity Framework Code first rounded out the Entity Framework Model first and Database first. All three of those equally supported. Use the one that makes you happy. Coders like the code first thing, but I'll show you ways that we're going to enable you to do even cooler stuff with Entity Framework, so definitely don't worry about that. Now, this bit of validation here is interesting because not only did this validation of string length and required find itself all the way over into the database, like this, but who is handling this work up here? Well, I can't even say anything nice about myself because it's too short. I'm going to right-click and say View Source. Oh, I moved Notepad. I forgot about that. And look at the source. A couple things to point out about the source here. It's HTML5, which might freak IE6 users out, and I'll talk to you about that in a minute. It's okay, IE6 users. We don't judge you. Totally judge you. We totally judge you. We've got things like legend and section and header. These are all kind of specific to HTML5 things. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But we've also doing a thing called unobtrusive JavaScript. Don't try to read that. I'm trying to see the entire page. Do you see how there's no big pile of view state or no big pile of JavaScript there? This is using what's called unobtrusive validation. Unobtrusive means it's not in your face. So what's happened is that chunk of information that was on the Entity Framework model, that little attribute, that little post-it note that we put on saying string length, has now found its way not only to the database, but the metadata has also generated here. So when we told MVC that we want to scaffold this out, it correctly at runtime actually figured out the field first must be of length 20. Lots and lots of power there. So it's nice. You've got validation basically in 3 places. You've got it at JavaScript, and if they turn that off or they sneak past it, you're going to get it at model binding time or saving to the database time, and then the database itself will disallow it. And I didn't have to repeat myself. This is one of the new kind of tenets that you'll hear a lot in software engineering is the notion of being dry, right? Don't repeat yourself. It's ironic that you can't say dry and don't repeat yourself without, in fact, repeating yourself, which I have now done 4 times. Now, this unobtrusive JavaScript is actually a new thing, and you're going to see that in web forms. And I would encourage the web forms programmers to check out Damien Edwards' talk on web forms, which is tomorrow at 8:30 in the morning. So I will not be there. In the morning, this time zone. 8:30 in the morning. It's going to be worth to get up. I will be there to support you at the very end of it. And he's going to talk about all the next stuff in web forms vNext, so check that out. Now, unobtrusive JavaScript is actually on by default in this funny little key here called unobtrusive JavaScript enabled equals true. It could have been called completely obtrusive JavaScript equals false, but they went a different way with that. If I change that to falsely unobtrusive, that's obtrusive, right, Damon? Okay. And I want to make it as bad as I can. So I want to go ahead and hit this again and do a view source. I need to fix that error one day. Things are more dramatic in larger fonts. Someone visibly gasped. They're like, oh, I can't believe they shipped that way. Oh, that's not bad. What that is at the bottom there is just a JavaScript JSON array with all that information, but the way things are moving is that people prefer to have their JavaScript outside so that you can do more aggressive caching on your pages. So you'll see in Damien's talk, we'll talk about unobtrusive JavaScript coming to web forms as well. So definitely something to watch out for. But the point there is we want to try avoiding repeating ourselves, and we want things to be nice. I think there's a lot of things going on within Microsoft right now that are getting people kind of optimizing for programmer happiness more than optimizing for productivity. I think there's a lot of talk over the last several years about optimizing for productivity and a lot of dragging of data grids and a lot of tap dancing on stage. And I think that if we optimize for happiness and fun and Lego pieces that snap together really easily, that productivity will fall out of that. So I hope that you'll hear a theme about that more and more. Now, this is the web forms part. Don't tell anyone, because I don't even think that did I tell Steve I was even showing this? Because I did not get permission. Okay, you should email Steve and tell him I'm doing it. That way it looks like it came before I did it. Can you backdate the email? I am. And is he online? Okay, good. Tell him. So this is not anything but a prototype. It's just a thought. We're just brainstorming live on stage in front of 50,000 people. Okay? I like to think that there's 50,000 of you. So this is an ASP.NET Web Forms application. Okay? And we've got another code-first model. We've got teams. Teams have an ID. And then teams have a collection of players. And then a player has some things. And then players refer back to teams. So you notice that there's a little bit more of a complex entity framework model there. It's easy to do trivial things and say, hey, look, it's amazing. It's more interesting to go and talk about relationships between objects and then think about how that turns out in the database. So let's look at that again. Put them side by side, shall we? So team has an ID. Entity framework will figure out that that's unique and that's an identity. It'll call it because it's called ID. And it says that team has a collection of players. Has a collection of players. So then there's a one-to-many relationship between team and players. And then players has a team and a team ID that will refer back. So that if you're looking at a player, you can actually follow that database relationship back. This is all a convention, and a very reasonable-looking convention, I think, for us to relate two tables together. But web forms, what can I do? Well, we are using, inside of this web forms application, a extension package that Steve Sanderson has written. It extends on a package called T4 scaffolding. What does T4 stands for? Text transformation, total text transformation, templating. There's 4 T's in T4. It is one of the greatest kept secrets in Visual Studio, and it's ridiculously powerful. You actually already have this on your machines, and you don't even know it. This T4 engine allows you to generate code. So we're using that code generation engine. If you're familiar with tools like CodeSmith or LLVLGen, these are all code generation tools that let you get a lot of work done quickly and then go home and work from home. So what I want you to do is I want you to check out this guy, Web Form Scaffolding, and then go work from home. This is a prototype that Steve has made to do scaffolding for web forms. So what I can do is, since I don't have a dialog box for this, because the new Visual Studio update there for MVC has a tooling update that did our scaffolding, I'm going to use the Package Management Console. This is a little something that is installed when you put NuGet on your machine. And we'll talk about this again in lots of detail over in the NuGet for the Enterprise talk. This is actually PowerShell. So if you've been avoiding PowerShell, you can stop now because it's in Visual Studio and you can't get away from it. But it's really easy to do. You don't have to learn PowerShell to do this. So what I'm going to type is I'm going to type in scaffold, tab, CRUD, player. And watch the right-hand side. We're going to create that database context that you would expect, but we're also going to start generating web forms. We've got web forms for create, read, update, and delete. And this really underscores a couple of points that I really want you to take home. I want you to take it home to your bosses, and I want to take it home to your peers and coworkers who may not be aware of this. So there's lots of talk about how MVC is the darling that everyone's talking about, and it's fun to demo MVC. Well, you're going to see equally cool demos coming from web forms. Remember that MVC came out of band. What that means is that web forms shipped in 2010. But then MVC shipped in this out of band, and they're doing this stuff, and there's a lot of talk about it. So then people say, hey, wait a minute, what about me? I'm web forms. Web forms and MVC are ASP.NET. And it sounds silly, but remember this. ASP.NET is greater than MVC, and ASP.NET is greater than web forms. So people should stop sweating that, hey, Microsoft invented the motorcycle, what about the minivan, or whatever. I mean, it's a vehicle. There's going to be many different vehicles. You know, we have one called Web Pages. Some people have forgotten about. Web Pages is what you see. I don't know if it's like that or like that. Maybe it's 3 spaces. I don't know. Web Pages is an inline coding model that looks kind of like classic ASP, but then you've got C# and dynamic and object orientation and any framework and all these things, so it's not really at all. But all of those things are ASP.NET. So I really, we'll figure out the marketing and make sure that it's clear to folks, but get that. You know ASP.NET, so don't think of yourself as an MVC programmer or web forms programmer. This is a great example where Steve Sanderson, who wrote this prototype, has realized that and said, well, I can still use Entity Framework code first. I can still use the code generation and reflection. I can use T4. I can generate anything I want to. So he goes and he generates, good-looking ASP.NET web forms. Let's look at the code behind, because it is actually very nice. Close this guy up. Nice, simple saves and stuff. He's using all of the code first stuff. You could generate whatever you're using for your database. You don't want to use code first? That's cool in the gang. You can talk to web services. You can talk to NHibernate or whatever. You would make an NHibernate web form scaffolder. Feel empowered to do this stuff. You don't have to wait for us to write these. And what's great is that all of these different scaffolders that we're going to talk about are actually all out there for you to play with and modify. So let's take a look and see if it actually runs. Or maybe it's just Scott talking a lot. Yeah, I think so. So here we go. Create. I see I need a team probably. I was going to say like I play sports. That's the fantasy part of this. Is sitting on the couch a sport? Maybe, well, I guess it could be a team. I'm really known for my spelling. Okay? Notice that Teams already knows about players. So it's one thing for him to have gone and generated 2 sets of web form pages and have them be unrelated, but it's more interesting that he's got it set up where they refer to each other, which is nice. So that must mean that if I go to player administration and look at list players, can't even type my own name. We've got that relationship. So I know it's easy to see kind of trivial examples and think about, well, maybe I won't be able to do this or maybe I won't be able to do that. Interesting stuff can happen with scaffolding. Let's look at a couple of other examples. I'm going to switch back over into the MVC one. And remember when I said add controller, there was this drop-down box. All the different drop-down boxes within MVC and within all of our new stuff are going to let you get in there. So that unit testing drop-down that we saw, if you have your own framework, you can get in there. If you have your own templating or your company has specific templates or you're using specific libraries that aren't ours, maybe you don't want to use jQuery, you want to use MooTools or something, you can get in here. So let's see how Steve Sanderson enables that. I'm going to go out to NuGet. And again, I'm not showing all the power of NuGet. I'll do that in an actual NuGet talk, but you get the general idea. It brings down software from the sky. MVC tab, scaffolding. So it's bringing down that T4 scaffolding, except instead of web forms, we're going to have MVC scaffolding. And now what I'll do is I'm actually going to go back and I'm going to delete person controller and person context and all this stuff, okay? And we'll regenerate using this new one. I can actually right-click on controllers and look at this drop-down box. The package that I brought down from Steve has a little bit of PowerShell in there, and he registers and says, hey, I want to get in there. I want to be involved. So now I can have my custom scaffolder there. So as a senior person at your job, think about what you could potentially do, making the code your way, work the way you want it to work with your loggers and your enterprise libraries and your database systems. It doesn't have to be specific to EF. I want you guys to really think about the possibilities, about how you can influence more than just your own code. Just because we're shipping jQuery and Modernizer and any framework doesn't mean that you have to use any of that stuff. Use what makes you happy and feel that you can go and change these things. I can run the template from here, or I can go and run it from PowerShell, to either one. Let's do person and person context again. We're going to fire that off now. Oh, I didn't name the controller, so I ended up naming it controller 1. So the difference between the one that we ship and the more extensible one that, that Steve did is he gets to include his own conventions. Like, for example, when we had a create page and an edit page, all of those text boxes were duplicated. First name, last name, first name, last name. The code was duplicated, and that offended Steve. I want to be dry. I don't want that stuff in 2 places. So he made a partial view. So when we say the create page, he says, go get your text boxes here. The edit page, same stuff. And then create or edit is there. So he's changed the structure of the application to be more dry, generate it from the same stuff. He didn't like something that we did, so he changed it. And that's really interesting to me. But still, we're generating multiple pages for multiple things, and that might be cheesy, right? I don't want to have a create page and an update page, and all that, kind of clicking around is lame. So how far could one potentially take this? Apparently pretty far, because that shortcut's gone. Let's go see where it is. Let's all watch Scott look for the missing presentation. Maybe it's one of these. Nope. Okay, maybe it's any of those. Sorry, friends. Da-ba-doo-ba-doo. We're going into Scott's email today live at TechEd. We're going up on the blogs. Makes you wonder how I get anything done, doesn't it? It's really kind of sad to watch. It's kind of like watching a three-legged dog. You know, he knows where he's going to get where he's going, but do you really have to watch it? So then he started downloading random code, and the whole thing kind of went downhill. People were freaking out. Nobody knew what happened. Nobody knew why that folder was deleted. Maybe it was Dropbox. Oh, it might be harmful. That's a good sign. Yeah, apparently I'm a victim of software piracy as well. Windows has been telling me for the last couple of weeks. Wonder if that's a problem. For testing only. I always wonder, is this the day? Is this the day that I'm going to be locked out? All right. So presuming all of that worked, and I'm really wondering where that file went, is we got a stock item, okay? And I want to go and generate some stuff. And you've seen me generating these things before, except look at this. There's a code templates folder, and inside that is a new template. And notice that the code templates folder is kind of along for the ride. It came in the project with us, which means that I can then check it into source control, and if someone brings it down, then they have it too. So it's actually extensibility without packages, and he's created an Ajax editor view. So let's see what we can do. If we go down here and we say scaffold, do we have scaffolding installed? No. Dun, dun, dun. We do. I'm scared of you. Let's try that. Let's wish me luck, friends. That was really sincere, too. I appreciated that. Luck. I want to watch him fail. Oh, it's falling apart. The whole thing is going apart. So what's happened here? What's that? Yeah, I know. Unlock the zip file. The one that I've lost, the one that I don't even know where it downloaded, that one. Right? Is that the one you want? Just download it again? Are you serious? You know it's there somewhere. Let's save it on the desktop. That way we won't lose it. That one? No. Is that it? No, I think it's that one. Custom controller scaffolder. So I'm doing a save as in order to find the thing that I don't actually want to download. Then I rescue him from, and then I drag him, and then he's gone. But no, he's back. And then I double click, and he's gone again. And he's inside of here. So now you're telling me that now that that's been unblocked, it will actually work. You think there's a chance that this is going to work? Because at this point, I'm ready to just leave. I'm just like, I actually had something happen. I have a tendency to put all my presentations in Dropbox in order to prevent this very issue. And I was presenting once, you guys know Dropbox, Live Sync, Folder Share, it's all the same thing, right? I was literally like setting a laptop up on stage, and it was like 186 files deleted from Dropbox. And I just like Alt-Tab over to the folder, and I just see them kind of going away. They're just like, what are you doing? You know? And then I think it was Rob Connery, who's in the same Dropbox with me, he was like tidying up, and just happened to be tidying up at the exact moment that I got on stage. And I'm like, you know, what do you do at that moment, right? The files are literally like disappearing, time is slowing, just like yank the Ethernet cable out of your machine. No! So that's very likely what happened. Have you been tidying up, Damien? Do you want to tell me anything? Huh? We better cheer when this thing works, because if it does, it's going to be exciting. So I just said scaffold, which we've seen before with CRUD, but I type in CON controller with Ajax Grid. Why is it called with Ajax Grid, you say? Because there's a little script there. And I think we said stock item. So it makes a controller that we expect, but then it just makes one view. What's the deal with that, Scott? Well, I'll tell you. Let's go and hit stock item. Bam. Oh, yeah. How you like me now, son? Whoopsh. So what's going on there? And again, there's nothing here that says you couldn't do that exact same thing in web forms or whatever, right? Whatever makes you happy. Again, my whole deal is happiness and empowerment, right? We don't want to be the thing that's holding you back from whatever you're doing. If you don't like something that we did, swap it out with something else. And if you make something great, make it open source and tell the world. So what this is an index.cs HTML that's using jQuery UI. And we actually ship jQuery UI, of course, with MVC. And do we ship it with web forms as well? jQuery? Next version we'll ship it. And you can always bring it down yourself, of course. So here we've got a jQuery grid. And notice on line 17 there, the column names got generated by looking at the stock items. Even the URLs got generated. And then we've got a controller in the back end with all that grid data, create, edit, and delete. So you can do a lot of really, really interesting stuff with this scaffolding stuff and the Lego pieces underneath it. jQuery, jQuery UI, Entity Framework, T4, scaffolding, things like that. Now let's do this. This will be interesting. So here's another daily build. I've got a couple of notes here, forgive me, because we all know how the demos have been going so far. So let's see a daily build, shall we? Let's just tempt fate. Maybe I'll just rebuild ASP.NET right here. That'll be good. Let's go ahead and make an application. I'll be using MVC, but it doesn't matter. Anyone makes you happy. And we'll go and create a brand new application, and we'll make a new class, except we'll make it a little bit more complicated than before. I'm saying prop tab, int tab, person. I should probably just slow down. This was probably a mistake. And the other 4 before it were also mistakes. Prop tab string, first name, prop tab string, tab last name, boop, prop tab string, tab, and let's say SSN. Okay? Then we'll scaffold out a controller for person. I got to compile first so the controller dialog can see that model, person. And I really want you guys to think about how much crazy stuff you could potentially do. You could go and generate SharePoint parts if it made you happy. I mean, you can really go and do anything that you want. And Entity Framework is just such a joy to use since the version 4.1. So I just scaffold this guy out, and then I'm just going to make it the default controller to save me a little bit of time here. In routing, I'm just going to say person controller, and then we'll run our application. And we'll make a person. It's my real Soch, totally a coincidence. Did not know that. I'm going to go to the SQL Management Studio and see what it generated for us. What are we, version 34 now? Okay, I'll get rid of that one. So we're looking at the database number 34. One of the things that Microsoft's kind of been not talking about lately is the notion of migrations. Like all this entity framework, make a blog on stage real fast, blah, 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 is all cute, but in reality, things are harder than that, right? So migrations is something that the team has been working on. I showed a very, very basic kind of prototype of it earlier, and it was really, really simple. It wasn't very fancy, and if you looked carefully at the video or you watched the talk, there was actually DOS boxes that were launching in the background, and like, you know, it was very MacGyver kind of a demo, and I'm actually a little surprised that it worked. No disrespect to anybody who was involved in that demo. But if I go back over here and say, well, gosh, now I want to change something. I've got my database generated. I want to add, though, a title for a person. And I want to add a display name, let's say, which maybe, I don't know, is different from their first name and their last name. And then I'll just go and rescaffold that out. And as a developer, you know, I think that this is awesome, and it's not really hard, so that's great. And we'll hit add and say, well, it already exists. Totally toss it, don't care. So it's going to go and regen that. And then I'll run the application again. The model that's behind or backing the person context has changed. Delete the database. Great idea, thanks, Microsoft. Or do something obscure that's hard to understand. Now I'm Googling with Bing, right? What the hell is going on? There's actually an accelerator for fixing this. You just click right here. See? So what I'm going to show you, this is just literally got this yesterday, and it's not on the official package source. It's actually in the Hansel NuGet server, and I'll show you how to make one of those in the talk on Wednesday. So it's a personal, private NuGet server, and it has entity framework.migrations. It's a package. I'm going to bring that over, okay? And I am going to type in migrate. So it's going to look for the DB context. It's going to load it up. So it's looking at the code itself, and then it's looking at the database, and it's doing a migration. So now if I go over here, hit refresh, now I've got new columns. Okay, that's cool. That was a non-destructive migration, right? We added some columns. We should be able actually to see that the data is in there, and then we've got some new columns. Okay. But what if I'm like, oh, oops, I actually display name, sorry dude, that was actually not supposed to be like that. That was going to be a calculated field, right? And then you have to go and say return first name and some stuff, and then last name. So, sorry, oops. Let's assume, though, that there's, you know, that's destructive. There's data in the database, right? This is going to be an issue if there's something in display name, because I made a column and now suddenly there's no column. It's just going to be a property. Sorry, schema update is terminating because data loss might occur. So it does the right thing. It's like, no, that's not a good idea. And I'm like, yeah, but I don't care. Cool. Go back over there. And now it's gone. Now, I might want to do something like this for production, though. So let's make a new database. You're laughing because you know I'm going to break something in production, right? So let's go and make person prod. The database administrator makes this because production is always somewhere else. And there's no tables in person prod. Okay? So now I want to do a migration, but I'm going to pass in a connection string. And I'm going to say, I can say migrate script, or I can say migrate without script. I'll show you both. Let's just do migrate. Oops. Ah. What is it not like? What are you pissed about now, man? A dot? I had a dot before. You think there's a character here? Well, you asked for it, sir. I'm going to have to type it all by hand. Okay, people prod or person prod? Is that the issue? Is that what you were saying, sir, when I mocked you just a second ago? Yeah? Mental note, do not mock audience. They are very likely paying more attention than you are. Or not. Capital M for migrate. Maybe I just freak out and clear everything. They changed it, apparently. No? Well, that's suboptimal. Capitalization doesn't matter. I'm going to try typing it. All right. So daily build. Daily build. He needs this for a birdie. Doot, bop. No, please, stop, stop. The best part is I don't know why it worked. Capitalization shouldn't matter in that one, but I hear what you're saying. So then I've just migrated to production, okay? But maybe I want to do a rename, and SSN should be Social Security number, except all of the programmers still like SSN, but the database guy wants something different. So then I can go and do something like column Social Security number. Right? But then I could go and say migrate script, because I don't want to really do it. Because there's the kind of migrations that you do that are like minor, like I'm still working this out, and you can understand why you want to go migrate as you're working on this in development time. But once things start getting more serious, you're going to want to create migration scripts. You'd make a migrations folder, you'd check it in, and you'd name your migrations 1.2.3. And you'd migrate the proper way. So this is the direction that the migrations guys are working on, and they would really, really appreciate it if you would offer feedback. Seriously. You have to really give them credit, and hopefully you give Microsoft credit for showing a lot more daily builds, a lot more crazy stuff, and involving the community as early on as we can. I think the MVC team kind of started that, and now you're seeing it all the way across web platform and tools. You want to talk about web forms? Raise your hand, Damien, and wave. Damien is a PM for web forms. You love web forms, something you wish web forms always did. He's sitting right there. He's the only guy not paying attention right now. He's deleting email. His program managers at Microsoft delete email and programmers code. You can talk to Damien. He's going to be doing a web forms talk. You can get involved by going to the ADO.NET Entity Framework blog and look at their migrations discussion and share your thoughts about what you think will work and what you think won't work. Now, one of the other things that we released recently is the IIS Express. I'll just go back and pick one of these random ones here. And which one was this? This was one of the ones that didn't work. Let's find out. All right, so notice that we are sitting on localhost, port 13, whatever, and we're running what is used to be called Cassini, the tiny web server. This is the ASP.NET Developer Server. It's this guy that you may be familiar with. Well, IIS Express is out, and IIS Express is fantastic. I can right-click here and say, use IIS Express, or I can just set it as the default for all of my stuff. We'll say use IIS Express, hit yes. I'm going to run my app, and then a different icon shows up down here. App still runs as before, so what? Big deal, I'm not impressed. Let's look at this task manager and sort and see where IIS Express is. We can notice a couple things about it. IIS Express is running as me, not administrator. I'm not running Visual Studio as administrator. I'm running the complete full version of IIS, and IIS is not a service. Let's actually do this. We'll come down here and we'll shut down IIS Express. And it's gone. So if you are working in an enterprise that doesn't allow you to have IIS on your machine, or you're doing complicated multi-service type things with IIS and talking to WCF, you have many services all running at the same time, that becomes more interesting. There are aspects of things about Cassini that you can't do with that little web server. You can't run SSL with Cassini, with the Visual Studio web server. You can with IIS. You can't, if you've ever done an HTTP module or an HTTP module that is set up to do something dramatic and change the way your execution path works, you have to register it in two places, system.web and system.web server, because system.web server is for IIS. Then that ends up making your web config not look like production. Now it can. Not only do you get your own version of IIS, but in fact, you get your own application host config. It's stored in my documents. So again, instead of having to be administrator and go off into program files IIS, I can go and make changes to how IIS works in here. I'll show you a couple things, and then we'll try something risky here. First, I'm going to right-click, and I think I have to hit Properties. So remember, I'm still not running as administrator, but I can go and say SSL enabled equals true, and I'll get my own SSL port just for this application, so that I can test my application in and out of SSL. Go ahead and run that. And I'll hit the different port. What's going on, Nemo? Do I have to restart the web server so it binds? There we go. You blaming IE? No proxies. That's not good. So I don't know why that's happening, and I apologize. But one of the things that we could do, which is a little more advanced, but why the hell not, right? Because the whole thing's fallen apart at this point, is try this. I'm going to go off script, and I'm going to make my own SSL certificate. I just made a custom SSL certificate for myself, registered to myself, because I trust myself. And then I'm going to run Cert Manager. And that's going to pop up, and I'm going to go and see where that certificate is. There it is. See this? Oh, that's not the right one. Let's see. Where's my new cert? When did I say this would expire? 2036? Not that one. Oh, I need to look at my current machine, actually. So I'm going to run MMC. You know the best way that this talk could go right now, like the most effective thing that could happen at this point? I'll just give you guys what you want, so then you'll get on my side and you'll start to support me, okay? I'm just going to make it happen for you. We're not going to talk about it. It'll just happen, and then that's just going to be it, and then we'll just, okay? So you happy now? Are we cool now? You've forgiven me? All right, good. So it couldn't be in there because it's not the one from WiMAX, because that one is from my ClearCard. It's a local cert on my local computer, and Cert Manager by default doesn't bring up your local certs. Thanks for your help, though, Brian. In fact, it's right there. So I'm going to double-click on it. I'm going to get this hash, not that hash. Where's my little hash? That one. Okay? So then at this point, I need that hash. I could do a couple of things. I could remove the spaces, which I need to do anyway. But that would be lame because the whole demo has fallen apart at this point. So why not just open PowerShell? And because that's badass. And then replace like that. But then that would require me to right-click and like select, and that would be lame. So then why not I just go out clipboard? Okay. Because why the hell not, right? So now that's in my clipboard, which is unfortunate because I'm going to need it in there twice. And now I'm going to go and I'm going to call this script here. And then I'm going to say, if I hit enter again, it might work. What do you got for me, brother? I want braces around the app ID? I've got that. Net sh http show SSL cert. Sweet. Find I $443. Okay, we're not in there. And I'm running as admin. Net sh http add. No, it didn't work. SSL cert. App cert hash app ID. What's that, brother? No, I want it all. And I want it now. Craptastic. No, it's not case sensitive. Badooba-dooba-dooby. Maybe just look at that hash again. Did I close down CertMon like a putz? Golly, Christmas. I'm trying to think of other swear words I can use that aren't. Vista. It's not even close to the right one. Remember that episode of Seinfeld when Jerry said that he hadn't thrown up in like 10 years, and then he ate some bad gefilte fish or something, and he didn't want to throw up, and he's like, I can't throw up because I haven't thrown up in 10 years. You don't understand. And they're like, why just throw up and you'll feel better? I haven't thrown up in 10 years. I'm on a roll. I was just telling Damien that I haven't screwed a demo up in 10 years. And now they're all wrong. That doesn't even look like the same thing. You think I got the wrong one before? Man, sweet Merry Christmas. So don't fill out your evaluations. Oh my God! Oh, fantastic. And the flowers are still standing. All right. So what are we on here? We're on application 32. We're all in this together, right, guys? Remember that when you fill out your evaluations. Now, I go in here, and I say 80 and actual 443, and I say Hanselman W500 because that's the name of this machine. So I'm saying, and what's significant about this is not how bad I am at demos today. What's significant about this is that you have the full power of IIS, okay? I'm actually, if this works, I'm setting up IIS Express to listen on port 80, and I'm setting up my own custom SSL certificate to listen on 443, and then I'm telling it, while not administrator, to allow me to do this in the first place. Damien, anything you can like to share now at this point before we try this? No? Good luck? Yeah. Screw you. So that's a good sign. That shows we're listening. There's a problem. This is not a trusted certificate. What? I can't just make a certificate and it makes it trusted? I can't just invent a whole kind of SSL thing and it make it trusted? What if I just drag it into trusted? Boom. Woo! In my defense, in the setting up of that particular demo there, I probably screwed up something with the automatic stuff. What that checkbox that Damien encouraged me to show before the talk is supposed to do is that when you install IIS Express, they actually generate one of these for you. They generate a SSL certificate for you, and they pre-register 100 ports from 44300 all the way up to 44399, so that all you have to do is go and say enabled equals true. I've obviously boogered that up in my clicking around in administrator. But I've put this on my blog so you can actually know how to do this particular thing, which it would require you to do those 4 extremely simple steps to do. And that allows me now at this point, I could go and maybe have Hanselman.com be in my host file. I could make an SSL certificate, and I could literally do testing on my machine as if it were production and I'm not administrator. To be even more extreme in the example, maybe I want to set it so when I click on log on, it goes to SSL automatically. Well, I could write a bunch of stuff in MVC, I could do require HTTPS and things like that, but I could also go to the web config because I am running the full version of IIS and use a module like the URL rewrite module, which we happen to have lying around, and grab this guy here. So this one here says, if you go to account/logon or account/register, then you need to be on HTTPS, otherwise you don't. That is a module, and it's inside of the web server section of stuff. So now I've clicked on log on and I'm automatically made HTTPS. So think about the kinds of testing and stuff that you do to interact with your production systems and how you typically at this point then move over to staging and you start doing that kind of work. So hopefully we're enabling you guys to do something a little bit more interesting with IIS Express. Let's do one last demo and why not tempt fate, huh? Let's do this. Remember how all of this was HTML5, right? And we can see what that'll look like in IE, actually, IE6. I'm going to yank out this JavaScript library, and I'll come back and talk about it in a second. I'm going to run a thing called Super Preview. Super Preview lets you see different versions of different browsers, like side by side. So I can actually go here, and say, well, let me see what it looks like 6 and 9 side by side. And they've also enabled the new remote browser thing, so I can actually see what this looks like on a Mac. They have a bunch of VMs in the sky. So they say they just lit up. So we'll say, let's look at Safari on a Mac on the right, and let's look at IE9 on the left. It's going to go off and do that rendering, and then left-hand side, that's IE9. Oh, thank you. And on the left side there is Safari. And I can even go down here at the bottom and see which particular section's rendered a certain way. It's pretty sweet. And they've got a bunch of different things like Firefox and whatnot. But I want to see IE6. See, now IE6 looks awesome. Yeah, that looks fantastic. But I'm using HTML5, so of course IE6 looks like crap. Well, what we're shipping with MVC now is this thing called the Modernizer library. That's what I mentioned before, and I teased you guys about IE6. Modernizer allows you to use HTML5 today and HTML5 semantic markup and some aspects of HTML5 and have it look decent in IE6. So I just added that JavaScript library and I hit refresh. And now IE6 sucks less. Do not clap for IE6. Good. I won't have it. So we're going to go to ie6countdown.com where we can see we're down to 11%. So one of the things that I can do is put a banner on my site to encourage people to stop using IE6. So I'll take that. We'll go back over here. Put that banner there, return, hit refresh. Now the IE6 people will be taunted appropriately. All right, my friends. Thank you for your patience and watching me suffer. I appreciate it. It was fun. You can get all of this stuff, like I said, at ASP.NET. Go to the download link, go to MVC, or any of those pages. Use the big green button. Even use the big green button if you think you have everything, because it will automatically detect what you don't have and then install the right stuff. You've got IIS Express, which is the full version of IIS, except it runs as a user rather than a service. Come to my NuGet talk. I will practice a lot on Wednesday, and I will not take any tips from Damien to do certain things. Check out Entity Framework, Code First. It's a joy. It's a lot of fun to work with. And also think about what you can do making your own Lego pieces with scaffolding, custom scaffolding, whether it be MVC scaffolding or web form scaffolding. And then also check out Damien's talk tomorrow at 8:30 on web forms. Thank you guys very much.